Sign this prenup. Hurry up, Drusilla Thorne demanded, her icy tone cutting through the lavish London apartment. Arjun Vance, a distinguished black professor, faced a document defining his worth in his fiancée's wealthy white family's eyes. This tense moment sets the stage for a story of love, betrayal, and a shocking revelation that flips the script. Where are you listening from today? Perhaps London, like Arjun, or somewhere across the globe. What do you think happens when a man judged for his modest roots uncovers a secret that changes everything? Will love triumph, or will hidden truths tear it apart? Subscribe to our channel to catch every twist in this gripping tale, and share in the comments where you're tuning in from. You won't want to miss how one signature sparks a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. The rain tapped a soft rhythm against the windows of The Quill Coffee, a quaint bookshop cafe in London's Bloomsbury. Arjun Vance sat at his usual corner table, a fortress of marked essays and red pens before him. At 30, he was a thoughtful presence, his dark skin glowing under the warm cafe lights, his tight curls revealing sharp cheekbones and eyes sparkling with quiet determination. Teaching English literature at a local university was his calling. The modest paycheck couldn't dim the thrill of watching students grasp complex literary theory. His students were his world. Every Wednesday after lectures, he'd grade papers with an Earl Grey, his sanctuary amid lesson plans and academic politics. Today, the cafe hummed. Students pored over textbooks, tourists murmured. Arjun barely noticed, focused on a Shakespeare analysis, when a warm, infectious laugh broke through. He looked up. At the next table, a woman, early 30s, her fair eyes crinkling, shook her head at her phone. Her cream suit screamed money, but her grin was pure joy. She caught his stare and flashed an apologetic smile. "Sorry," she said, her voice smooth. "My friend just sent me the cheesiest dad joke. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything." Arjun's lips twitched. "That's awful," he said. "Your friend needs better material." Her eyes lit up. "I'm Briar Carter, by the way. And you are?" "Arjun Vance," he replied, extending a hand. Her handshake was firm, her palm warm, and something about her gaze made his pulse skip. They fell into conversation. Briar, a rising star in an architectural firm, didn't carry the arrogance he'd expected. She asked about his students, genuinely curious, laughing as he recounted tales of academic antics. "Academics are wild," he said, animated. "Last week, I had to stop a full-on debate on whether Hamlet was truly mad." Briar threw her head back, laughing, and Arjun felt an unexpected warmth. She shared stories of late nights drafting blueprints, but always circled back to him. "What's it like seeing a student have that aha moment?" she asked. He told her about Ben, a shy student who'd beamed when he understood Paradise Lost. Her eyes softened. The hours melted away. By closing, they'd swapped numbers, and Briar promised coffee during his next lunch. "You're going to need it with those aspiring poets," she winked. Over the next 6 months, their connection deepened. Briar became a fixture in his life, showing up after lectures with his favorite latte, helping him organize dusty texts, taping up student poems. Weekends, they'd wander Hyde Park, fingers brushing, debating music. Arjun fell hard. Briar seemed to feel it too, her eyes lingering, texts lighting up his phone. One evening, on a park bench, Serafina took his hand. "You make my world better, Arjun," she said, earnest. "I've never met anyone like you." His heart raced. He squeezed her hand, believing this was real. He didn't know then about the Surrey mansion, the father with a cold smile, or the paper that would test everything. For now, Arjun Vance was just a professor in love, caught in a chance meeting that felt like fate. The tires of Briar Carter's sleek black Range Rover crunched against the gravel drive of her family's Surrey mansion, a sprawling modern estate looming like a fortress of wealth. Arjun Vance, seated beside her, smoothed his tweed jacket, his heart thumping. He'd spent hours choosing his outfit. His tight curls were neatly styled, accentuating his keen features. Briar squeezed his hand. "They're going to love you," she said. But the knot in Arjun's stomach tightened. He wanted to believe her, to trust the woman he loved could bridge his world to hers. As they stepped out, the mansion's vast glass walls and manicured gardens felt like a warning. He was entering a realm where he might not belong. Inside, the air smelled of lilies and new money. Contemporary art cast shadows across polished concrete. Abstract sculptures stared down. Arjun's shoes echoed as Briar led him to the dining room. Gareth Carter, her father, stood like a king, his silver-streaked hair impeccable, bespoke suit tailored. A retired tech magnate, he carried himself with authority. His smile was thin, practiced, never quite reaching his cool, fair eyes. "So, you're the professor?" he said, extending a manicured hand, his tone slicing the word. Arjun shook his hand, forcing a smile, his skin prickling. Isolde Carter, Briar's mother, offered a warmer greeting. Her kind eyes and gentle smile softened the room, but her glance toward Gareth betrayed deference. A well-known philanthropist, she asked Arjun about his day. The spread was lavish. Scallops, risotto, wine worth his monthly mortgage. He tried to focus, but Gareth's presence was a scrutinizing spotlight. "Teaching must be so noble," Gareth said, slicing his scallops. "Spiritually rewarding, I mean. The hours must be nice, even if the pay—" His lips curved into a blade-like smile. Arjun's fork paused. The jab landed, sharp, deliberate, polite. He forced a laugh, voice steady. "It's not about the pay," he said. "It's about the students. Seeing them light up, that's worth more." Isolde nodded, asking about his students. "What's your favorite text to teach?" she asked. Arjun described turning Hamlet into a forensic investigation. Briar chuckled, her hand brushing his under the table, a small anchor. But Gareth wasn't done. "It's admirable, really," he said, sipping wine. "Choosing such a modest path, I suppose it suits some people." The word modest hung heavy. Arjun's smile tightened. Was it his job, background, or blackness Gareth found lacking? Briar jumped in. "Dad, Arjun's students adore him. His office is like a library of their brilliant essays." Gareth's eyes flickered, his smile unwavering but cold. "How charming," he said, and Arjun felt the room shrink. He tried to bridge the gap, presenting a rare novel as goodwill. Gareth raised an eyebrow. "A first edition? How thoughtful." He barely glanced at it. Arjun's heart sank, but he pressed on, asking about Gareth's tech career. Gareth's answers were clipped, his triumphs boastful. His world was power, prestige, pedigree. Arjun, with his working-class London roots, was an anomaly. Isolde was kinder, but her warmth couldn't erase Gareth's chill. As the evening wore on, Arjun caught glances between father and daughter. Gareth's raised brow, Briar's quick headshake. She didn't see how his words cut. Growing up, she'd shrugged off such barbs. But for Arjun, each comment was a reminder. He was an outsider. As they drove back, Briar reached for his hand. "See, they liked you," she said, hopeful. Arjun forced a smile. He wanted to believe her, cling to the love that felt real. But the mansion's shadow lingered, its opulence, a stark contrast to his life. Gareth's words echoed. He told himself love would be enough. He'd try for Briar, for their future. But as the city lights blurred, a quiet resolve stirred within him. He was more than they saw. This dinner was only the beginning of a battle he hadn't chosen. The air in Hyde Park was thick with roses, their petals drifting. Arjun Vance stood beneath an oak, heart racing as Briar Carter dropped to one knee, her fair eyes shimmering. A velvet box revealed a platinum ring. "Arjun," she said, soft. "You're my everything. Will you marry me?" Tears welled. He nodded, whispering, "Yes." Briar slid the ring on. They laughed, kissed, held each other. For 30 seconds, Arjun lived a fairy tale. The magic lingered as they drove to the Carter mansion to share the news. Arjun imagined a warm evening, but stepping into the grand foyer, the air shifted. Gareth Carter emerged, his cool eyes narrowing at the ring. Isolde followed, cautious. Briar, beaming, announced, "Dad, Mom, we're engaged." Arjun braced, but Gareth's lips curved into an edged smile. "Well," he said, crisp as frost, "I suppose we'll need to discuss a prenup." The word shattered the fairy tale. Briar's grin faltered. "Dad, can we at least celebrate first?" she pleaded. But Gareth's gaze never left Arjun. They sat in the study, heavy with leather and cigars. Gareth poured scotch, his movements deliberate. Isolde sat quietly. Arjun's stomach churned, the ring suddenly heavy. He knew the Carters' world was different, but this felt like a trap. Gareth's voice was calm. "Arjun, dear, it's not personal. Briar has worked tirelessly. With your circumstances, we must protect what she's earned." Circumstances hung, laced with unspoken meaning. His blackness, his working-class roots, his modest salary. Arjun's throat tightened, but he nodded, his smile hiding the sting. That evening, Gareth called Arjun. "I hope you understand, dear. This is just practical. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings." The prenup arrived next day, delivered by courier. Arjun sat at his small kitchen table, the pages dense with jargon. The terms were brutal. No claim to Briar's assets. Minimal alimony for 2 years if divorced. Small life insurance if she died. The cruelest clause: if he tarnished the Carter name, he'd walk away with nothing. Each word branded him a threat, a gold digger. Briar came over, apologetic. "It's just a formality, babe," she said, hand on his knee. "It doesn't change us." But his words felt hollow, his wince betraying discomfort. Arjun stared, heart a tangle of love and doubt. He loved Briar. But this prenup wasn't about love. It was about power. About Gareth's belief that Arjun was less. "Why does it have to be like this?" he whispered. Briar sighed. "It's my dad. He's protective. It's not about you." But it was about him. Arjun's fingers trembled. He wanted to fight, to tear it up, to demand Briar stand up. But love made him hesitate. He thought of their moments. The park, the cafe, her lit-up eyes. Maybe this was the price of their future. He signed, tears blotting the ink. Each stroke a surrender. Briar pulled him close, whispering fragile promises. Outside, the city hummed. Arjun clung to hope. But that night, the clauses echoed, a quiet warning. The hospital room was a sterile prison of monitors and antiseptic air, fluorescent lights casting shadows across Arjun Vance's face. At 30, his thoughtful features were striking, dark skin glowing despite exhaustion, tight curls tucked under a cap. He sat vigil by his father's bedside. Arjun Vance, his anchor since he was 8, lay frail, diminished by a sudden stroke. The man who'd raised him alone in their modest Islington flat, who never missed his school plays, was slipping away. Arjun held his hand. Kian's breaths were shallow. Kian's eyes fluttered open. "My boy," he whispered, voice gravelly. "When this is over, go to the Royal Trust Bank, safety deposit box. Everything's there." Arjun's heart clenched. "Dad, don't talk like that," he cracked. "You're going to be fine." But Kian squeezed his hand. "Just promise me," he murmured. Arjun nodded, tears spilling. Briar Carter, his fiancée, sat quietly, soft with concern. She'd been there 3 days, bringing coffee, rubbing his shoulders. Her quiet support reminded him why he loved her. Hours later, Kian's hand went limp, monitors flatlining. Arjun's world shattered. He clung to his hand, sobbing as nurses ushered him away. Briar held him, a lifeline. The funeral was simple, in a small Islington church Kian loved. Briar stood by his side as he delivered a eulogy. "He taught me to never let anyone make me feel small," he said, eyes glistening. The words felt like a vow. A week later, Arjun's phone rang. "Mr. Vance, this is Mr. Davies," a calm voice said. I was your father's solicitor for over 20 years. We need to meet about his estate." Arjun almost laughed. An estate? Kian drove a beat-up Ford, lived in a rented flat, but curiosity and Kian's final words pulled him to Davies's office, a modest suite in Mayfair. Davies, a wiry man, handed him a key. "Your father was clear," he said. "You're to open the safety deposit box alone. Read everything inside, then we'll talk." Arjun's hands trembled as he drove to Royal Trust, the key heavy. The bank was an imposing relic. A clerk led him to a vault. His heart pounded as he turned the key. The metal lid creaked open. Inside were neatly organized documents, photographs, letters. His fingers brushed a yellowed newspaper clipping. Art dealer Arjun Vance sells the Lost Renaissance collection for £3.5 billion. A younger Kian stared back, shaking hands with suited art world figures. Arjun's knees buckled. Kian, his quiet father, was a billionaire. He rifled through the box. Auction house receipts, bank statements, photos of Kian at exclusive auctions beside art review names. Arjun's breath hitched as he found a letter in Kian's familiar scroll. "My boy," it began, "I wanted you to grow up knowing your worth comes from your heart, not your wallet. I built a fortune, but I chose a simple life so you'd be strong, grounded, free from the weight of wealth." Tears blurred his vision. Kian had founded his company in the 90s, creating software that revolutionized financial security. The sale in 1995 made him one of the youngest black billionaires in America. But he chose a simple life, shielding Arjun from the spotlight. The letter continued. "I lived modestly so you'd learn resilience, so you'd know your value lies in who you are, not what you have," he wrote. "But now you're ready. Use it wisely, my boy. Make a difference." Arjun's sobs echoed. Kian hadn't just hidden wealth. He'd poured it into the world. Funding art programs, community centers, schools. Photos showed him at ribbon cuttings, always in the background. He'd given away millions, all while raising Arjun in a rented flat, teaching him to hold his head high. His sacrifice overwhelmed Arjun. The prenup, with its cruel clauses and Gareth's smug smile, flashed. The irony was a knife. The Carters had judged him. Now he was wealthier than their dynasty. He lingered for hours, rereading Kian's letter, studying photos. Kian shaking hands with a senator, cutting a ribbon at a funded school, laughing with community leaders. Yet, he came home to their tiny, flat, grilling burgers, cheering at track meets. His sacrifice overwhelmed Arjun, living simply so he could grow up free. As he closed the box, Arjun's tears dried, replaced by quiet fire. Kian's gift wasn't just billions. It was the lesson that his worth was never tied to money. The Carters saw him as a threat, but his father saw him as limitless. He tucked the letter into his briefcase. The vault door clicked shut. Arjun Vance was no longer just a professor, no longer just Breyer's fiancé. He was the son of a man who'd built a fortune and given it away. The world he'd known was gone. A new one, vast, daunting, his, was waiting. The Carter mansion's dining room gleamed with opulence, minimalist chandeliers casting prisms across a glass table. Arjun Vance, thoughtful at 30, his dark skin glowing, sat with a quiet confidence. His tight curls neatly styled. His eyes held a new fire, kindled by his father's £3.5 billion legacy. He'd come not as the modest professor the Carters judged, but as a man transformed by truth, his inheritance a secret weapon. Breyer Carter, his fiancée, sat beside him, fair eyes flickering nervously, unaware of the bombshell. Across the table, Gareth Carter presided like a king, impeccable, his smile a polished mask of condescension. The air was thick with tension. "Arjun, how's teaching?" Gareth asked, tone dripping false warmth, as if it were a quaint hobby. "It must be so rewarding in its way." "The hours must be nice, even if the pay." The familiar jab, a reminder of their view of him as less black, working class. Arjun smiled, heart steady. Actually, he said calm, I'm taking some time off. Family business to handle, financial advisors, that sort of thing. Gareth's eyebrow arched, lips curving into a patronizing smirk. Oh, how sweet, he said, patting Arjun's hand. It's nice to have a little something saved, isn't it? Arjun's pulse quickened. He reached into his briefcase, slow, deliberate, and slid a folder of bank statements across the table. 3.5 billion pounds in assets, investments, properties. The numbers stared up like a challenge. The room fell silent. Isolde Carter's wineglass halted midair. Gareth's face drained, eyes darting over figures as if foreign. Isolde coughed. Briar stared, mouth agape, papers trembling. Arjun, she whispered. What is this? He met her gaze, voice steady. My father was Arjun Vance, the art dealer. You might have heard of the Lost Renaissance Collection? The name landed like a thunderclap. Gareth's composure cracked. There must be some mistake, he stammered. These numbers, they can't be right. Arjun leaned back, unshaken. They're right, he said. My father sold his collection for 3.5 billion. He chose to raise me simply, but he left me everything. Isolde's eyes widened. You're Arjun Vance's son? She asked, awe-tinged. The Arjun Vance? Arjun nodded, savoring the shift. The Carters who dismissed him were unraveling. Gareth, sensing fragility, tried to recover. Well, Arjun was a brilliant man, he said, forcing a smile. Such an eye for art, and you, Arjun, must be so proud of your family values. Desperate words. Isolde leaned forward. What was your father's approach to collecting? Groundbreaking, Arjun answered coolly, detailing his father's work. He watched their faces. Gareth's forced warmth, Isolde's eager curiosity, Briar's stunned silence. He felt a quiet power. Briar finally spoke, wounded. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Arjun's heart tightened, but his resolve held. I wanted to know who you were when I had nothing, he said, words cutting through pretense. I wanted to see if you'd defend me against your father's doubts. Her past silence hung like a verdict. Briar looked away, jaw tight, inaction dawning. Gareth tried to pivot. This changes everything, doesn't it? We should celebrate. Perhaps a family trip or... Arjun cut him off. What's changed, Gareth? He asked. My bank account or the way you see me? The question hung unanswered. Gareth's smile faltered. Isolde busied herself. Briar stared. Arjun's mind flashed to the prenup. Now, with billions, the document was cruel irony. He didn't gloat. The truth was enough. He'd walked in as the outsider. Now he was Arjun Vance's son, his worth dwarfing theirs. As dinner ended, Gareth's invitations felt hollow, Isolde's questions desperate, Briar's silence deafening. Arjun stood, head high, his father's legacy afire in his veins. The Carters underestimated him. The truth set him free. The London skyline glittered through Arjun Vance's apartment window, a constellation of lights. At 30, his thoughtful features were a quiet force, dark skin radiant, tight curls loose, eyes burning with resolve. His father's 3.5 billion pound legacy had shifted his world. But the prenup for Briar Carter lay in a drawer, a stark reminder of the Carters' distrust. Now, on his worn couch, the platinum ring rested in his palm, its sparkle dulled by what it represented. His heart, once tethered to hers, was unraveling. Briar sat across from him, tailored suit rumpled, fair eyes pleading. Arjun, we can fix this, she said, desperate. Let's tear up the prenup. We love each other, don't we? His gaze hardened, his father's letter echoing. Your worth comes from your heart, not your wallet. He thought of the Carters, Gareth's cutting smiles, Briar's silent acquiescence. Would you have loved me differently if I told you sooner? He asked, sharp. Would your father have respected me, or would you have just found new ways to let me feel small? Briar's silence was an answer. The relationship limped on. Briar couldn't reconcile his wealth, nor the forced role reversal. She'd fallen for lifting him into her world. Now, with his billions, she was adrift. Gareth's attempts to mend the rift were transparent. Invitations to exclusive auctions, sudden praise for Arjun's quiet strength. Arjun saw through it. Gareth didn't value him. He valued his bank account. This cold clarity sharpened his resolve. One evening, Arjun met Briar at their favorite park bench. He handed her the ring. "The woman I loved wouldn't have let me sign that prenup," he said, calm. "She'd have stood up to her father, seen my worth before she knew my net worth." Briar's face crumpled. She took the ring, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Apologies couldn't erase the past. Arjun kept the prenup, not out of bitterness, but as a talisman. As he walked away, the city's pulse felt like his own. Arjun channeled his father's legacy, founding the Arjun Vance Arts Foundation. He poured millions into art scholarships, community centers, schools. His father's quiet philanthropy became his own. He didn't abandon teaching, establishing a fine arts program at a Hackney college, a tribute to Kian's belief in art's power. Standing before his students, Arjun felt a joy money couldn't buy. He was no longer just a professor. He was a force shaping futures. In a quiet bookstore one evening, his hand brushed a stranger's, reaching for the same poetry anthology. A woman laughed, her warm brown eyes crinkling. "Looks like we have similar tastes," she said, voice melodious. Lyra, a talented graphic designer, knew nothing of his wealth. They talked for hours, laughing, swapping stories. Lyra saw him, not his billions. Her admiration rooted in his spirit, his quiet intelligence, the way he lit up when he spoke of literature. She stood by him fiercely. Arjun's heart, once bruised, began to heal. Lyra didn't need to save him. She simply loved him. Her presence was a steady warmth. Kian's gift wasn't just billions. It was the lesson that true wealth lay in knowing his worth, untethered to others' approval. The prenup, meant to protect Briar, had saved Arjun from a family that couldn't see his value. It was his most profound education, a lesson in self-worth he'd carry forever. As he stood in his new college program, watching students create dreams, Arjun felt his father's pride, his strength, and the promise of a life built on his terms. The morning sun spilled through the wide windows of a cozy Islington brownstone, casting golden patches across a living room cluttered with sketchbooks, paintbrushes, and tiny art smocks. The black man, now 32, stood at the heart of this joyful chaos, his tight curls in a bun, his dark skin glowing with warmth. His thoughtful features were undimmed, softened by peace, his eyes sparkling as he watched two identical 4-year-old boys, his twin sons, giggle over a paint-splattered canvas. Their laughter filled the home. This was his sanctuary, a world built on his terms, far from the cold glass of the Carter mansion and the sting of a prenup. Lyra, his wife, entered, brown eyes crinkling, balancing a tray of star-shaped croissants. A graphic designer, her presence a steady anchor. She'd fallen for his quiet charm in a bookstore, knowing nothing of his £3.5 billion inheritance, loving him for who he was. "Breakfast fit for my artists," she announced. Arjun knelt, bold silver watch glinting, spreading jam as the twins, Anya and Dev, squealed. This was family, not calculated alliances, but a bond woven from shared moments and unconditional love. The twins were a whirlwind of energy. Anya, bolder, smeared paint on his cheek. "I'm going to paint a skyscraper." Dev, mischievous, giggled, adding blue, toppling it. Arjun laughed, rich and unguarded. Lyra caught his eye, hand brushing his, a silent promise. Their love grew in the ordinary. Late-night talks, kitchen dancing, comforting nightmares. She'd stood by him through navigating his father's legacy and whispers of prejudice. The brownstone reflected their life. Twins, finger paintings, family outing photos. A framed letter from Kian hung in the hallway. Your worth comes from your heart. Arjun honored his legacy through the Arjun Vance Arts Foundation. But his greatest joy was here, with his son's laughter and Lyra's steady love. He still taught at his new program, his classroom, a haven. The past lingered, faintly, a shadow. The prenup, tucked in a drawer, a reminder of when love blinded him to his value. Now, watching Anya and Dev, he vowed they'd know their worth, untouched by judgment. Lyra sensed his quiet moment. "You okay?" she asked, soft. He nodded, eyes on the twins. "I'm more than okay," he said. "I'm home." Her kiss on his forehead sealed their life. The twins tugged. "Papa, be the monster," Anya demanded. Arjun roared playfully, scooping them up as Lyra joined in. The room dissolved into chaos. Love, the only currency. This was the wealth Kian wanted. Freedom to live authentically, surrounded by those who saw his true value. The Carter's world felt like a distant memory, a lesson that forged his strength but no longer defined him. As the sun climbed, the family settled on the couch. Twins nestled, clutching a storybook. Arjun read, voice weaving tales of brave heroes. Lyra's hand rested on his, entwined, a quiet testament. This was his family, his legacy. A life built not on wealth or approval, but on the unyielding truth of who he was. The prenup had tried to cage him, but now, in the warmth of his brownstone, with his twins' laughter and Lyra's love, Arjun Vance was free. What did Arjun's journey teach you about love, worth, and standing tall against judgment? His story, from a prenup sting to his father's multi-billion secret, reminds us that true value lies within, not in others' eyes or bank accounts. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment that redefined your sense of self? Your stories inspire us all. A huge thank you for joining us on this emotional ride. Your support keeps these tales alive. Smash that subscribe button to catch our next story, and let us know where you're tuning in from. Until next time, keep shining, because your worth is more than anyone's opinion. See you soon.